Are you ready to report, Karen?
Am I ready to report? Is that what you said?
Are we recording?
Oh, I recorded. I'm sorry. Yes, I hit record.
Okay, we'll call the June 14th, 2022 advisory committee meeting to order. We will bypass the approval of the minutes for lack of a quorum currently. And we'll move into old business. And under that title, we have a review draft of 5-year solid waste management plan, chapter 2, collection systems, and chapter 4, recycling and reduction. So I would imagine that's going to bounce to Pete.
Yes, combination of me and Karen. Karen, if you want to go ahead and pull up the collection system that we worked on the last meeting. And really what we've done is went back and made the changes as discussed and wanted to kind of follow up with those changes, make sure that they were good. And if you can continue to go down to the next change section, Karen. Okay, so right here is the section where we wanted to describe what the organized collection system is. So I did some research, and what I did is I found where organized collection is defined in Minnesota statute. So I kind of used that and just wanted to review that with the committee to see what you guys thought of that definition. Karen, can you expand it just a little bit?
Yeah.
And fill your screen a little bit more. Thank you.
I just discovered we could do it ourselves too.
Mhm.
Well, I think that definition is fairly vague. It pretty much describes the entire area that we have. Organized collection is described as a system for collecting solid waste in which a specified collector or a member of an organization of collectors is authorized to collect from a defined geographic service area or areas, some or all the solid waste that is released by generators for collection. Every hauler we have in the county is licensed. So I don't know that organized is the right term that we need to use on that, Pete, with that definition.
Because it says, well, a defined geographic service area or areas.
And I think that's the key phrase there.
Well, and I think also the fact that it's authorized. I mean, those components make an organized system. How would you change it, Bruce?
I would truly change it to say, because when you're referring to organized, Pete, you're referring to the urban services district, correct?
That's what the sentence
That
above
would-
the sentence above that says that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the urban services district, so I would say, it would either be contracted and then subscription would be what would be considered unorganized with your terminology. Because it's really somewhat of a critique on the players in the business, because I mean, who would call UPS and FedEx or Amazon unorganized?
No, I tend to think that, and you got to remember that the first thing I'm describing here is the municipal areas, then the residential contracted areas, and then the residential subscription areas. So organized term will apply to urban services district the city of Shively as the municipal collectors. And it would also apply to where, cities and HOAs that have one single collector for their defined area. The organized is that it's really just one hauler that's collecting everything within that defined area.
Yeah,
So it's,
Be, and sorry, would it not be easier or more straightforward and not require a definition just to break it down into single hauler / franchise and individual subscription as the two areas? I mean, I think you can read those and you know exactly what they are.
there's a difference between contracted and franchised.
Well, what I was saying is single hauler / franchise or single hauler / contracted. I mean, single hauler would cover the municipal, would cover the USD. I mean, it's public works collecting. Sorry, I'm just trying to come up with something that's clean. It's no big deal.
I understand, and I'm all for making this straightforward. What I tried to do was use something that was from a code and had been used before. If it doesn't fit here, it doesn't fit here. So, Andy, would you say organized collection is described as a single collector that is authorized to collect from a defined geographical service area or areas, or all of the solid waste, that is released by generators or for collection?
I mean, I think you could say that. I just think that. I mean, I know I've said this in the last meeting. I just don't like organized and unorganized as descriptors. But I mean, if that's where you're going to land, I think that definition is probably as good as any.
So your issue is not really this paragraph, it's paragraph with the unorganized in it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think this could be I think this paragraph itself, if you end up using organized, could be a little bit leaner. I mean, I think once it gets into service area or areas, some or all, I mean, it's starting to try to cover so many bases that it almost means nothing in that little subsection. Although I get what Pete's like you said, Pete, you're trying to pull this from something that has a definition in in Minnesota as well. But yeah, I mean, I think my bigger issue is just organized and unorganized. But I mean, I'm not on the advisory committee, so that's just me. That's just me stating my own personal opinion.
There's a gray screen up there. Okay. So why don't we try this? Karen, can you make it change? Jumping around a little bit. An organized collection is described as a single hauler collecting in a defined geographic, a single hauler that is authorized to collect
No, that doesn't even work either, because that implies, for example, that a home rule city with a single hauler is disorganized. I think the problem is the word organized. And when I'm listening to you all, I'm tending to think that the thought is closer to whether Metro coordinates the whole thing, not whether organized or unorganized exists.
Well, organized is used in a lot of terminology in a lot of the stuff that I've read. Organized refers to not necessarily a hauler, but it's really a method of collection.
Well, and it's
And-
also coordinated because, for example, if you want to say that the
Yes, I agree.
unincorporated areas of some of the county are not organized, I totally agree with you. If you want to say my little city isn't organized, I disagree with you.
No, I would agree that your city, any part of the city that has a single
Caller.
hauler that is authorized to collect within those boundaries is
Mhm.
organized. If it's, that could be an HOA, municipality,
Mhm.
and small city. Where it's not is what basically where you have a subscription service. So would it be better to call it just contracted or minutes?
Because
I
those
like the
single
term
users are
contracted.
contracting too.
I like the terms contracted or subscription based.
I agree.
So throw us out a suggestion.
I think I would take what you added out
Yeah, I agree.
and then where it says connections provided by the city, it would almost help if there was another thing that talked about what we're talking about. Maybe even a small separate paragraph that deals with not city.
Take all of this out.
Well, that's just my opinion. I understand what Andy is saying, though. It's the word unorganized is a pejorative.
That's not really true. That's not really true as a general proposition. In labor law, you've got organized workers and you have unorganized workers, and there's no pejorative to either term.
Well, that depends on your viewpoint.
Well, those are terms
No,
of
I
art.
understand. I understand what you're saying.
I personally like the definition as you put it together, Pete.
It's clear.
Oh, I don't think I wanted to delete that.
Okay, so does there need to be any adjustment to this to make it simpler? Because I agree that it's statute wording. And I think one of the things that we wanted to do was really to kind of get towards where people would understand what we're saying when we say it. Can we simplify this somewhat?
Pete, is that word in any statutes currently?
Organized?
Yeah, in Jefferson County?
Not in Jefferson County.
Okay. I have personally, I think the reason that some of us are concerned about that is that we have never heard nor used that term throughout the industry itself. So just from an industry perspective, that to me would be contracted service. So by definition, I'm not an attorney. I know Pat is and others may be, but I don't resonate with organized because we don't have any contract that would say organized collection service, for example.
I understand. I
In
think
Jefferson County, there are none.
Are your workers
think when-
organized or unorganized, Brian? In other words, are they
Well,
union
see,
employee?
well,
Is there a union or not?
we're non-union, but we don't use the term organized or unorganized. We use associates or employees.
Well, organized and unorganized is common parlance in labor law.
I got it.
Not that that has to be the case here.
I got
But I
it.
think-
It's not in the solid waste collection business. It's not normal or customary at all.
Well, it's defined
From the-
here.
Brian, if I could, it's
Yeah.
not, something that what I would call it's a system description and not something that a hauler would use. It's more of a description of a system that is used more when you're talking about the different types of collection. It's not used in contracts because there's no need for it to be there. It's more on when you're trying to organize or do something at a state or county level, it's a way to describe the different types of collection. So it's not something that would be used in the industry of providers. It's used in people that have to organize or to define the system of collection. So there's lots of reference out there, and that's why I went to get what was done in other locations in Minnesota, whichever state that is. That's the way they defined it across their state. So
Well, if you're stuck on using organized and unorganized, could we just insert the word system between organized and collection? It's like it would say organized system collection and unorganized system collection.
That sounds good.
I like that.
I think we're seeing ghosts.
I understood what to change. Did you say organized system collection?
Yes.
Well, you could just take out the words collection is described as and then leave system, because then it reads after that.
Or an organized collection system is described as.
But then you've got collecting, so you don't need it twice.
I was just, yeah, saying like system, organized collection system, like.
Is described
Good one.
as. Sorry, I don't think I'm following.
Well, again, those of us that are in the industry would not call Urban Services District in the city of Shively organized. It would be contracted. That's a contracted system. There is a single provider that's contracted to collect the waste and recycling.
I also wanted to add that you could substitute the word platform for one of the systems. It's a collection platform or a platform for collection as possible substitution.
I remember from the last time we were discussing that by the time we got further down and these terms were used again, it didn't seem as controversial. I'm not sure why. I don't know if it would help to look further down and then step back up to look at it after seeing further, but just a thought.
Possible, yeah.
I think that's a good idea. Let's come back to it.
Yeah.
Okay. For example, residential contracted, and then you have organized in parentheses here.
Keep scrolling down.
Right. This is kind of like what Sandra was referring to, right? Like your city would fall under that one.
Yes. So go ahead and scroll just a little bit more, Karen, to get the rest of that. Can't really get them both on there. Can you minimize your toolbar?
Well, I'm sure I can. I don't know. Ow. Oh, wait.
It's that little
There
arrow,
you go.
right?
Actually, I think that's very good. It's very clear to me.
Any other thoughts? So I guess that's good. We can accept that one. Let's go ahead and continue on down. We was asked to add that some home rule cities also handle collection of litter baskets within their jurisdiction. Just tried to clean that up a little bit. Any issues with those?
The only thing is that where you're talking about the litter baskets, why do they have to have a collection agreement with a private waste hauler?
In areas that don't have a dedicated person to do it, like let's say Dixie Highway on out towards the county line, you can have litter baskets out there, but there isn't anybody to empty it. So somebody can add a litter basket, but if nobody's emptying it, it doesn't do any good.
I know, but this
So-
implies that we're ordering them to do it. Let me go back another way and tell you the reason it came to me was, as I said before, we empty our own. Our maintenance men empty them in great part. So if you'd put in another clause with a comma, basically the agency or organization or whatever you want to call it, or city, whatever, empties their own or has this agreement, right?
Well, Sandra, just out of curiosity, I know that your maintenance people empty it, but then it's still collected by, you put it in another cart or dumpster that's collected by.
Right. But that isn't what this says. That says any litter basket.
Just addressing litter baskets.
Exactly.
What section? I'm kind of misunderstanding where you're
I
going.
think what Sanders saying
Sandra.
is it looks like you're,
The last sentence in the litter basket thing.
yeah, if the city takes care of it itself, then you don't have to say they have to have an agreement. You say must have a
Correct.
collection agreement. So you need to say if they don't do it, or somehow. Well, she's asking them to say they can do it themselves.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, could you just say must be emptied by that organization or have a collection
Or
agreement?
have a collection, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
What is that?
Well,
And I'd like it
no,
more.
I think it's better where it says must have collection. So you go up to there and say, what did someone say? They said it well. Say it again.
Must
empty it themselves.
Yeah, must
or,
empty it themselves or have a
collection
agreement.
agreement. Must.
right.
Right.
There's a prior sentence that addresses home rule cities.
But it doesn't address litter baskets.
Right.
It says some home rule cities also handle collection of litter baskets within their jurisdiction. Couldn't that cover it?
Yeah, except that
Yeah, but then that's leaving it open. It's still, according to this paragraph, then it's still they must have a contract, even if they do it themselves. So
correct.
what's added right now makes it perfectly clear. Yeah.
Me too.
I think it was that the home rule cities are different than the suburban area that
Right.
isn't a part
So
of
you
any.
want to talk about that up there, but here where you're addressing the basket specifically, you just have to be able to say they could do it themselves or they have to do one or the other.
Well, I think that that's true. the way it's written right now is true
All right.
for every situation that I can think of.
Is anyone not okay with it?
Let's roll.
Yep. I heard that before.
So I did add here, when we're talking about Voight Avenue, the suggestion was that we put in the date that it could close. So I put in what was on the agreed order. It might be sooner, but it won't be later than this. Any issues?
Question in this regard. Do we include the tonnage going into Ralph Avenue as beneficial reuse in our reporting?
We do.
So we do include that tonnage.
Yes.
Okay.
That is my intent. I would have to go back to make sure that that did happen. There was a lot of different numbers that float around, but yes, that is the intent, that it would be included.
And that's my concern as to when it's going to close, because then we will lose that volume from our totals. And we're going to show a decline in diversion at that point.
I think that is a real concern, Bruce. That's why we really need to work on finding homes for waste that can be diverted.
Can we confirm whether or not we are including it for certain? Yeah,
I can.
for the committee? Thank you.
I will do so. Let's continue on. We were asked to add this. This was approved at the last meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Any concerns? Keep going. Last meeting, without needing to have something to back this up, or some examples. I toyed with putting examples in from the study, but that's difficult because of the confusing way and the multiple different ways that waste is provided in our solid waste management area. So what I did was I basically put in as reference. If somebody doesn't think that that's a proper way to do that, let me know and I can retry.
Will the people reading this have access to that study?
Yes, it's an online study.
Then you could put that on there. Tell them where to put a link in there.
Yeah, we can do that. Added the language barrier, which I thought was a really good suggestion.
Mhm.
New section that was added by me afterwards as a weakness, that was identified in the 10-year study was that the bulky waste system in the USD doesn't effectively manage the accumulation of solid waste and litter. And I basically took this directly from the study. And really, it's just saying that the junk pickup, the way it is designed in the urban services district, isn't the best way to provide those services. It creates quite a few problems. Abuse of the system is huge. People importing waste from other properties or outside of the USD is a major problem. Illegal dumping in front of these crews is a major problem. And something that we're going to go to an appointment system. But I needed, because we're still not on that appointment system, I just wanted to make sure that we pointed it out in the 5-year plan, that the collection system is kind of broken and still needs to be fixed. I'll give everybody a second to take a look at it, but it's basically directly out of the study. I would also say that some of the things have already been fixed or in the process of being fixed.
Just curious, when do you plan on making this change to the appointment system, whatever you're calling it?
Well, our first step was to change the ordinance to allow us to collect it differently, which is complete. The second part was designing the system, the appointment system, which is nearly complete. And we want to launch this at the right time of year, which will be in starting around the first part of November, because we have to clean an area, then turn it on to appointments, clean the next area, turn that on to appointments until we get through them all 12 areas. And it'll be a challenge for when you start to get to the 8, 9, and 10 and 12 weeks, because you're doing appointments for all those areas that have been cleaned and still having to maintain a full week of cleaning in the other areas. That's why we chose to try to roll this out during the winter when junk set out is at its lowest level. We really hope that this will work like it did in our pilot area, where we didn't have piles of junk sitting around. People can get rid of their junk as it's generated instead of waiting 3 to 4 months for their set out time, which causes more illegal dumping.
Yes, people aren't going to wait 3 to 4 months.
Right. Any questions or concerns? I think that continue down, Karen, but I think that's it. All right. Well, that puts us back up at the top again to our organized or unorganized collection system. Let's look at it one more time.
System in here one too many times, but I might need help.
Actually, listening, if we put, or like somebody suggested, if we put organized in the first sentence / contracted, and then we take out what you added, which is red and blue, what's left is true.
But
I would agree with that.
I don't know that you can say what is, to me, what's in the urban services district and in the city of Shively is not contracted. It's performed by municipal workers. It's not a contract. Unless
So
you
is
use the words.
Shively's not paying you anything for doing it?
Shively collects its own waste with its own workers, just like in the urban services district.
Okay,
It
then
is-
aren't they both organized collection systems
Yes,
instead of a single thing? So it would
It's for
be,
organized collection systems.
so, and the city of Shively are organized collection systems. That would be correct?
Yes.
That's better English, yeah.
And then we don't need to have the definition.
So and I'm just gonna say my piece and then I'll be quiet on it. Yeah, on the matter. But it is when we talk about organized collection being the contracted area, and you want to use the word organized, and then we get into the weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses is that the organized collection system has a problem with bulk item pickup or the dumping on people. That's not an issue with the waste haulers because we have, the bulk item rates and people call in and they schedule. We're already on the appointment type of basis fee. And that's where we take organized to be somewhat of a slap in the face of the current providers, in the free market areas. Versus using the term contracted or, contracted and subscription-based service, something like that. Versus organized and unorganized. And I understand where Pat's coming from a labor perspective, but in the industry terminology, it's almost somewhat insulting. And I do liken it to, looking at delivery companies like the UPSs and the FedExes and the Amazons and everybody else that's delivering packages. I look at UPS as a very organized company. And who would ever refer to them as an unorganized company in a report that we're submitting to the state?
Would it be accurate after removing the definition he's put in there and saying collections provided by city employees, blah, 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 doing another sentence that says there are other smaller organized collection systems within Jefferson County? Would that be accurate?
It would, but we're only in this section describing the municipally collected system.
Within the USD, I understand.
The next section deals with contracted, which is also organized.
Can I make a suggestion?
If I could for just one more second. To say something is organized or unorganized, I even in the weaknesses section, I did not want to make this a slap in the face to anyone. And I don't think that it is. I think what I am describing is a system. If there's an indictment of the system, it's not an indictment of the haulers that perform in that system. It's the system that is the issue. And, I made that pretty clear in the weaknesses section. Can we go down to the weaknesses section?
Strengths.
So in here, I basically inferred that the subscription-based unorganized system is inefficient. The system. And if you go down just a little bit more, although private waste collectors in the solid waste management area provide excellent services, the inefficient unorganized collection system has resulted in households with subscription-based collection having the lowest average level of service at the highest average cost per household. So it is not an indictment of the private waste haulers. It's the system at which waste is collected in certain parts of the city. You can go back up to the definition.
Can I make a suggestion?
Mhm.
Okay. I hear somebody talking in the background. Okay, we've got that highlighted all in red. What about if this paragraph just says the first sentence, municipality operated residential collection within the USD in the city of Shively are organized collection systems. Okay. Then go back down, say collection. I had it for a second. Collection from a defined geographic service area or some area of all the solid waste that is released by the generators for collection is provided. In other words, take the last part of the stuff that's in red, stick it between the collection and the is, and we may have to modify a word here or there. And I think you're defining it okay without having, it seems like it makes it simpler and still saying all the same stuff. Collection from a defined geographic service area or areas is provided by city employees. In other words, you're taking the last part of that red sentence, sticking it where you're defining things, and you can get rid of the whole red sentence. I guess keep going. Areas, and then say somewhere all the solid waste that is released from generator. I don't know.
Where this started was that the red wasn't there at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Right. People felt like that organized needed to be defined. That's what I tried to do.
Okay, but I think you still are here. Well, everybody see what this says now. So we're get rid of the whole. Don't get rid of it yet, but so you read the first sentence, then you start with collection. And to me, that's defining and saying what you want to say. You say it's an organized collection system, then you say what it does.
We would have to split this out a little bit. So are you taking away the red?
Yeah.
And the whole red sentence would go away.
That's a little confusing for me.
I don't get the part about the released by generators. It feels like
Yeah,
a lawyer wrote it.
right. I just
To me,
think,
that could go away.
yeah, I agree. Released by generators for collection. Just, I would you better say it's just solid waste from citizens. Solid waste generated. Just say solid.
No, but solid waste by itself is solid waste. I don't think we care who it came from.
Right.
Tell you what, instead of continuing to spend time on this,
Yeah.
let us come up with several different ways of doing this. If anybody wants to email us and suggested some language, we can put out all the different options out there to and see what people think. I mean, that's all we can do. And again, it's to describe the system. I'm honestly, I'm okay with not having it there if people know what we're talking about. But that's what people said at the last meeting is people wouldn't understand what we're talking about.
I think that's, I would agree, that's what we need to do, Pete.
Okay, so Are all other changes agreed upon? Except for this. Okay. So we'll go ahead and save this document. We'll accept all the other changes except for this. We'll go ahead and put together some additional suggestions for this paragraph. Anybody wants to send suggestions to us, we'll take them and put them in one document, and then we'll talk about them at the next meeting. Okay, which brings us to the second chapter, recycling and reuse. Hopefully everybody had the opportunity to pre-read this, but we'll go through. The questions are highlighted in green. Do you have a plan to reduce the need for land disposal of yard waste? Metro ordinance was created 51509, and I basically put in the exact ordinance there in italics. And then I also added that we provide home composting education and outreach, and a program called Love 'em and Leave 'em that encourages homeowners to mulch leaves back into the lawn instead of putting them in the collection system. Is there any suggested changes or comments about that section? Okay, question 4 and 5. List the counties and cities within the solid waste management area that collect or manage yard waste. I've more or less said yard waste must be offered to all residential customer cities and HOAs by private waste haulers. And I added the part about the city. It'd be difficult for me to list out every small city and HOA that has decided to purchase
I
those
didn't
services.
want you to list out, but I find a couple of times where you could take credit for more happening than you do. And I don't want you to list the cities, but you start with a sentence that says must be offered. But when you say they're doing it, you've only got USD and Shively. And I think you could do another clause because many of the ones above, the residential customer cities and HOAs, do actively participate too. So I think that I think you need to take credit for the fact that more than just Shively and the USD receive waste collection.
I agree. We can make a note to add that language into
Yeah,
this.
there's a couple of places where I found that, and I just thought you need to blow more of your own horn than you are.
Well, I agree with you, and please point those out as we go through.
Well, I think I may have missed some, but I did find a few more.
I mean, do they care about every city? They don't even know. Would it make sense?
No, but the thing is, you're
Oh, no.
going from a small portion of the population to
Right.
really a larger portion of
Right,
the
that's,
population.
actually, I'm agreeing with you, Sandra, and I'm just asking, instead of, we didn't add it because we don't want to list all the cities, is it safe to say a percentage? Do we know, like approximately 80% do it, or is it 90%, or? I'm just asking the question, okay.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't know. I
Okay.
couldn't answer the percentage. Well,
They don't need to know every little city, whether it's doing it or not, somebody's got, just people don't care about a city with 300 people, but they do probably care if we're doing it like about 80%, 90%, something like that. That's my thought, okay.
I may be able to add that percentage because we do track the percentage of people with yard waste.
Right, just say
So I might be able to add
approximate
that.
percentage, be correct.
Okay.
That'd be great.
list of permitted composting operations. We only have one composter in the solid waste management area. However, a pretty good percentage of yard waste goes outside. So I ended up putting those in there.
And later on in another paragraph, you say for composting by Smith Creek in Indiana. And I thought that Smith Creek being in Indiana is a big deal. I think Smith Creek being as huge as it is a big deal. And again, this was a place where I thought just a few more words, you could take credit for more.
So what would you say to like out of the county for composting by Smith Creek, which is a large
Facility in Indiana.
Gotcha. Okay.
What about tonnage?
We can consider, I can take a look at the tonnage percentages and see if I can't incorporate those. Want to add a note for that, Karen? All right. Curbside collection, residential and industrial, commercial and institutional.
Can I make a slight edit suggestion for the items accepted? It says at a minimum newspaper and then continues to list on for containers. I feel like cardboard should probably be in the mix there as well. Is that not one of the requirements?
Unfortunately, it's not listed in ordinance.
Ah, okay, so that's just direct from the ordinance then. Okay, my apologies.
Yes. I will double check to make sure, but that I didn't miss it. I think I probably copied and pasted, but if not, I might have missed it. So
okay. It's just such a detailed list, but without cardboard seems a bit unique.
I'd agree, and it needs to be updated.
You could also put the cardboard in a separate sentence.
Yeah. We can, yeah, and I think that's a good idea that we can say what is currently accepted typically are these items.
In which case, then I would suggest indicating from your all's very thorough list of acceptable materials as well, right? So that would include like all types of paper and kind of more into the containers details too.
Yeah, we can do that. We would make it an exhaustive list, yes. Residential drop-off.
Just a couple of things. One is there's commodities as is collected. Since we've got sites and commodities, it feels like are should be the verb, but that isn't really. We're using the word citizen here very often, and I almost wonder if the word wouldn't better be used resident.
Not a problem.
Did I miss any other things, Sandra? that
Just
you
go
said?
one line up all the way to the left. One line, no, just you're going too far. Just literally one line from where you just were. Okay. Just go up to that T above it. You keep going too far. Okay, that should be an R. Okay. And the rest of this page I really like.
Any other comments here on what's there on the screen? We'll continue to kind of roll down. If anybody has any comments or concerns?
Hey, just a question about bulky items at the Louisville Metro site. Does that include mattresses?
It does.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
On this page in the Christmas tree thing, this is another case where Louisville Metro does that. But numerous waste haulers are carrying off trees in other parts of Jefferson County. In other words, everybody in Jefferson County does not have to go to one of these 3 locations.
True.
Because it's under the.
Did we address that in the collection system?
No, not specifically Christmas trees. It just feels like this is more narrow than what's available to the people.
Christmas trees here seasonally.
Yeah, let's look at adding something about um, is Brian, do you guys have any special programs for like fall peak season for leaves? Or is there anything in there that y'all specifically do to tell people to set out Christmas trees?
No, I can say that the yard waste, they're collected with the yard waste routes. And those are still running during that time, so.
Yeah, the only thing specific we do is if it's over 8 foot, have them cut it in half. As far as specific to Christmas trees.
So we can add something about the Christmas trees, leaf drop-offs. I mean, or leaf like limits or anything like that on the number of bags of leaves. Because some places do have limits on the amount of yard waste that can be set out.
On the automated routes, it either has to be bundled or has to be in the cart. They would have to have multiple carts if they had an extreme amount of yard waste.
Okay, we'll take a look at the language up there and kind of make it generic enough that it'll work in the collection system. For the event system, I think, was there any other changes that you would want to do there, Sandra?
No, I thought it was very clear.
Other recycling, any questions, concerns? Take back programs? You know, there's so many of these types of programs that are out there. If anybody knows of any other ones, please let me know and we can list them here. Food waste. Okay, keep going. Education.
I thought putting all these links in was very good.
I agree.
Yeah, the bad part about it is that once it gets into the plan and, you know, you send a hard copy email or hard copy to the state, they're not necessarily going to have these links live.
But
But
they
we'll
can
have it.
type. That's okay.
There we go. Okay, we'll kind of scroll through. If anybody has any concerns, please stop us and let us know.
Pete, did you reach out to Lori about this?
I have not yet, but I will.
Out
Might
of
want to
date?
put a note in there to reach out to them. I need to reach out to several places, including Julie Donna's group over there.
Well, I'm on the call now, so. And yeah, I thought the section looked good on the green team.
Okay, good. Check that box.
Made it easy on you.
Not for that.
Although you might just want to say Louisville Metro Green Team organized by the Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability, just because it is everybody within Louisville Metro is welcome to participate in it. It's everybody's team.
Group does great work. Okay. Number 8 is not applicable. Describe how motor oil, batteries, antifreeze are handled. Any concerns there? Kind of continue to scroll, Karen. Household hazardous waste, any issues?
It's a question. It looks like there's nowhere to recycle latex paint. Is that true?
That is true. Actually, that was one that I had added after Karen had sent this out, was to add something about latex paint. We did have one. The Waste District got a grant, and Habitat Restore took on the equipment and the recycling, and they was to sell the paint and used funds for building more houses. But they really struggled and with handling it all, and they struggled with not having inmates to assist. And we collected most of it at our recycling centers. We lost our inmates as well, so the program has been gone since before COVID, since COVID hit.
So what are people doing with cans now?
Well,
Sorry.
yeah, they're number one, try to give it away, use it. Then if you can't, you should solidify it using kitty litter or the sort. Let it dry out till it's hardened, and then you can put it in with your normal waste. It is, because it's water-based, it's not considered hazardous.
Okay.
Which nobody wants to hear, because it's a call that we receive constantly. What do I do with my
Well,
latex
so many
paint?
people use it.
Sadly, people end up leaving it in garages and stuff for a long time, so it's hard. I think a lot of it wouldn't have been qualified for the recycling program to begin with, unfortunately.
It'd be too hard. Mm.
Which we ended up with a lot of bad paint. 30-yard dumpster loads of it that had to be taken to be solidified before it can be put into the landfill at a pretty decent cost. Any other questions about household hazardous materials? I will make that edit, Sandra, about the latex paint.
Well, you don't have to edit it. You answered my question.
Electronics. Any questions in that particular section? Great. One of the things, if you could stop there, ordinance as far as electronics goes, recently Metro enacted ordinance that said that you can't put that stuff into your normal waste stream in the urban services district. something we might want to consider countywide, that electronics don't go into the garbage system. We have a collection system out there for it. So just making a note, might put that in an action item. I don't know what to discuss. Office paper. Any questions there? Received this from Jefferson County Public Schools and what their policy is, because it's required that solid waste management areas assist their schools. So this is how that's done. Any questions? Good. All right. Go to the nuts and bolts. Strengths and weaknesses. Any concerns about the strengths of the program?
Do they
Jump to
do
the next.
anything with, when you list weaknesses, what do they do with that?
What does who do with the state?
Whoever reads it, right?
Yeah.
So what it does is we just identify them, and then in our next section, when we get to the board, we identify actions to improve the system. So we have to list the weaknesses, our action items on what we're going to do or what we're not going to do for any of these weaknesses that we see.
I guess part of the reason I ask it, some of these things you can't do much about right now.
True. We still need to identify them. Maybe we can in the future. Maybe that, somebody out there that's a business looks at this and says, hey, that might be a niche for me. So continue to scroll down there, Karen. Some of this is the same stuff that we've been talking about in our subcommittees.
Is that yellow where you were going to make a correction?
Oh, I just saw that too. I think I highlighted it for Pete already.
Because there's no beginning of that sentence.
All right.
I think he said it mostly came from the study, so I was going to look back at the study and see what was going on.
We'll take a look at it.
There's something missing at the beginning.
Any questions or concerns?
Well, I don't want to interfere until we're done with all the weaknesses, and I want to ask a question.
Okay. Much of this, what you're seeing now is pretty much directly from the study. Okay, Greg, that was the finished of the weaknesses. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I don't see it addressed, but I personally think a weakness we have, and I'm not saying anything about what we've done so far and what we're doing now, but for the future, I really do think it's a weakness that our household hazardous waste only has one collection, and we expect people to go there and do that. I just get so tired. We've had junk pickup, and I can't tell you the number of fluorescent bulbs that people throw out there with junk pickup and got picked up. So there's mercury all over my alley. There's mercury all over this neighborhood. And then every week in recycling, some people throw a couple in there, and then some people just throw them in the trash. So I think a weakness of our system is the distance people have to travel to do household hazardous waste. A lot of people don't do it. And I think that should be something that we maybe want to say is something we need to work on. So
I agree with you. I've got a whole pile in my garage right now
yeah.
that needs to go over there.
But you're a good person and collect them. I'm telling you, we walk and run a lot, bike in
Yeah.
the neighborhood, and I saw hundreds, perhaps, fluorescent light bulbs in the last couple of weeks.
Well, what I would tell you, and we can certainly add that, and I do agree it's a weakness.
Okay.
Because as a result, that's where it ends up, because
Yeah.
it's not convenient. But
And I'm not saying we can
from a
address it immediately or that we're doing anything wrong. It's just something I think we need to be looking at, working on.
from a practical standpoint, and somebody that enforces a lot of the ordinances and what is set out, you're trying to make it more convenient for people to do it.
Yeah,
But there's nothing more convenient than putting it in their own garbage can.
Right.
Because they don't really care.
Right.
I don't think that it would resolve the problem if we had more of those sites, and those sites are definitely more expensive. They're definitely very expensive.
I don't
I
think
think
I don't think we have time or place here to propose answers for it. I'm
Right.
saying by not addressing it, it doesn't get
it
addressed.
is an issue.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Might not have a good answer for it, but
I don't, and this isn't the time or place to answer it, but by not saying it as a weakness, I think we're ignoring it. That's
true.
Agree.
okay. Thank you.
Any other weaknesses? I think we have a whole lot more programs than people know.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is getting the information out there. And maybe that's also a weakness, is that we have a lot of different programs, but we're not reaching that into the community for people to even know about them. Now, we are addressing that with our marketing company once we get that complete. But I think that that's one of the reasons why we're getting that marketing company, because this is a problem. We're not getting the information about these things out there to people. Would you all agree that that could possibly be a weakness?
Yes, but I think you have to word it carefully, because we need to take credit for all the good things we're doing. Dispensing more information, as Karen has talked about over the year, it's not that simple. You know, even what we were talking about, target audiences and everything else. I think that whatever you say as a weakness needs to not make it sound like a simplistic problem.
Agree. So let's look at adding something to that effect, Karen, and being careful in the way that we phrase it. I mean, it could be that in our strengths, we also pointed out that we have a large number of programs and really good programs. But in the weaknesses, we're not getting that information out there about the programs as well as what we would want. Something to that effect.
Exactly. Acknowledging that.
Actually, instead of saying not getting, we ought to go the other way. That we want to get. In other words, not start with the negative, start with the positive.
Yeah, we want to get the word out about
exactly
wonderful programs. Yeah. Yeah, and there's always room for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna highlight that one, Karen, so we don't miss it. Okay, I think that ends the recycling section. We could move on to litter and open dumps if people would want to. Or we can even move on to enforcement and citing chapters, but I'm trying to work with the citing part of this. I'm trying to work with planning and design, Louisville Metro Planning and Design, before I really take it any other place. On the enforcement side, it really does come down to what's currently in ordinance and what we do. That's my forte. So I want to finish that up, but it should be pretty good by the time that you guys get to it.
Are
That
there
would
just
be-
those two areas left?
No. Let me go through and look at, tell you what we have left. Anyway, Karen, let me just pull up the document itself.
Are you?
Okay, so I'll just run through it really quick. This is the background information. Just tells about the governing body, who's on the board, who's on the advisory committee, who did the plan, who wrote the plan, and the person that you would contact. Information about the resolution, because the plan has to be a pass-through resolution. And then it gets into the collection system, which we just talked about. And this is the weaknesses. And this is the section I'm talking about, that you list a detailed account of specific actions or projects the governing body will complete to maintain or improve the collection system, the frequency at which such actions will take place, a date for commencement of the activities, and when it will cease. So that's what we're taking, and we're putting our specific actions into place. Another section is the disposal section, in which case, we're listing out all the disposal. We list out how much waste we're generating now. We project that based upon populations over the next 20 years, I think it goes out. And then we have to ensure that we have capacity to deal with that waste going out 20 years. So they have changed this section, which I have to get into quite a bit. But this is, this is another chapter that we have to take a look at. Recycling and reduction is what we just went through. Open dumps and litter is another chapter that we haven't looked at. I'm working with Rob Lush, who is the Clean Collab coordinator, and we'll work on that. Part of this is enforcement. And when they say open dumps, it's not necessarily just illegal dumping that you would see on the side of the road. A open dump has a certain definition under the state, and it's a certain amount in a certain area. The Garland Avenue site was an illegal open dump in which we made an application to get grant funds to help clean up. Robinson Wrecking will be the next one that's over off of Campground Road. So So we don't have too many of those dumps left in Jefferson County. We have a lot of smaller ones, which we handle pretty much on our own. So we'll be getting into that one a little bit. And then it gets into the same thing as far as litter and what you're going to do there. This is that facility siting. And this is just how it really has to do a lot with planning and design. And then it does also have to do with if somebody is going to site a facility in Jefferson County, it has to be consistent with what's written in the 5-year solid waste management plan. If not, how do we do consistency determinations, public hearings, and such? This is the enforcement section. Already working on that. And this is the financial section. They're pretty loose on all this stuff. They don't expect perfect numbers by any means, because who's going to be able to I guess put all this stuff together and be all that close? It's just crazy. So that is basically the document, and for each one of these, they're asking for copies of the signed ordinances, or any enforcement documents that you use would be connected. Any education material is in attachments. Any question on the document itself? And that did include all the different chapters. So we've gotten through 2. Okay. Well, any other items that you guys have for us tonight? Okay.
Pete, I just got a set of information. The National Waste and Recycling Association has a couple of documents to submit, but they weren't available for this meeting. They will be, I believe, for the 109 board meeting next week. So you will probably receive a copy of those. I'll just mention that to you so you can look out for them.
Okay. Anything else? Well, I think, did we have a quorum at the moment?
And we probably have a quorum to approve the minutes, I believe. Count them up, Karen.
I only had 7. And
Oh.
that's if everybody stayed on.
I don't think we do, Bruce.
Well, without a quorum, then I guess I can ask if there's any public input from anybody outside of the committee who wants to offer any input.
This is Jerry McGraw. I would like to make a couple of comments.
Sure, Jerry.
First, let me say that I applaud you all for what you're doing here. A lot of work has gone into this. I know the staff does a lot of the initial writing, but then each of the members have to review it. And I'm about to ask some questions, make some comments, and I do not mean to be taking away from anything that's been done, the importance of what's being done, but maybe to ask a few questions about some other things in that regard. In your first document tonight, there was comments several times were made about efficiency, unorganized systems being inefficient and things of that type. Well, the first question that comes to my mind is, what's the yardstick for measuring efficiency? Is that how much is being picked up? What the cost is? What really defines efficiency when you're saying some things are efficient and others are not efficient? So I raised that question of what is the yardstick for measuring efficiency? I have looked through this and I sent Pete some comments, I guess about 3 weeks ago, Pete, something like that, which I will raise a couple again. What I am seeing as I'm reading through these documents are a lot of we're doing this. And then at the end, today, we're talking a number of deficiencies. Well, what I'm looking at when I'm dealing with the plan is what I'm going to do. I presume you're probably going to continue with the things that you've been doing, but what's going to be done to improve the situation? As an example, recycling was stated in here, I think if I have my numbers correctly, outside the urban services district is only at about 23%. What can be done to educate people, to get people, and I'm not one who says go pass an ordinance. Ordinances are about as obscene as anything I can think of in this type of situation. But what can we do to get the people, if recycling is what everybody wants to say it is worth, what can we do to get that 23% up to 32%, then maybe 42%? And how does that fit into the plan? What are we going to do in the next 5 years to increase that recycling number? It was pointed out that there is a problem with latex paint. I talked with Pete a couple of weeks ago about this. I've got a bunch of rental properties. I've been renting houses in this county since 1975. I have accumulated a lot of latex paint. Fortunately, it's not lead-based paint, but it's latex paint. What do I do with it? I mean, some of it's 30, 40 years old. The cost of going out and buying enough kitty litter to dry all this stuff up, but then it just gets into the problem. And if I've got the problem, I'm sure that a lot of other people have latex paint. And is there a better way, some better system to deal with some of these problems? Electronics used to be a real problem. We had a couple of businesses that would take electronics, the old TVs and things like that. What can we do from a 5-year plan to better enable the disposition of electronics? And as we look through many of these things, what can we do in the next 5 years to make these things simpler, easier? And a lot of it is just like talking to fluorescent lights. What's going to happen if I have to drive from here to from East End out to Grade Lane to get rid of, and one of the things Pete and I talked about was a small 1-pound propane tank. What's the real likelihood that most people are going to drive from Middletown to Grade Lane to get rid of a 1-pound propane tank? So what in these areas can we do? Another factor which I haven't seen anything so far, and I know one of the things that I'm working on right now. We had the tornadoes went through southern Kentucky 6 months ago, 6 months and 3 days, I believe. What happens if we have another tornado comes through this area? I'm currently working with the Middletown Anchorage Fire Department and several of the small cities and homeowners associations to try to develop some workable disaster plan for these areas. Right now, yes, many of us fall under the Metro Plan, which is 300 and some pages. Come on, folks, that's not a working document. That's an encyclopedia to sit on a shelf somewhere. Metro government comes under FEMA reimbursement. Small cities come under FEMA reimbursement if there's enough disaster. Homeowners associations and neighborhoods do not, and we've got to come back to Metro government. What is Metro government, and I'm presuming this comes under solid waste management, going to do with trees, with houses where the roofs have come off, things of that type? What kind of planning is being done in that? Because I'm going to be looking at that as we're working in, whether it's Middletown, whether it's Douglas Hills that I'm working with, whether it's Lake Forest, and we have those tornadoes, we have that disaster. What are we going to do? We're going to be coming to Metro. Is Metro prepared? Does your 5-year plan for what's going to happen in those regards? Sorry to take up so much time, but some issues I'd like to raise for consideration.
Thank you, Jerry. Pete, you care to address those questions?
Yeah, I can address them, but Jerry, as we talked at one point, I think a conversation would be better than me responding to the email that you sent. First off, what the committee has been working on, and probably one of the most important things to keep in mind is this, what we've worked on is the as is and the strengths and weaknesses. Our next step in each one of these chapters is to do action plans for the next 5 years to what we're going to do to address any of those issues. So you presented that concern about you're not seeing that, but we just haven't taken that step yet. But I want to assure you that will be part of the process. As far as, hang on a second, let me look at something real quick. Latex paint. We can talk a little bit about the metrics for what is considered efficient and not. I think that's a little bit deeper discussion, but I would think that metrics in that would be cost per household and the amount of services that are provided for a particular area or property. And that's that, a lot of that information's in the study, and we can talk about that. The latex paint issue is something that we talked about tonight as being a problem. And electronics, if I would say that through our pop-up drop-off events, which I think that you had a concern about the name of it a little bit in your email. We plan them out as far as we can, and there is ample opportunity for people all over the county to do those because we're doing it in 3 different parts of the county. Actually, even in the urban services district, you got the waste reduction center, but we've increased the opportunity to dispose of hard to recycle items tremendously through that program. Household hazardous materials, as we discussed tonight, is a difficult one. And, it's not as though that you can just set out collection containers for hazardous materials because obviously people will misuse that mixed stuff. So you have to have a staffed location to handle the incoming waste to make sure it's segregated correctly. That's an expensive proposition. And while I think everybody here would love to have a curbside collection of household hazardous materials, it's probably to the point where that's not economically feasible. We can, we will bring stuff like that up, but I think that's going to be in the plan. But not a lot of people are going to take a 1-pound propane cylinder all the way across town to do that. And that when we get people that call like that, our advice to them is do a survey of your whole home and make the trip worthwhile because there's obviously much more material in most people's homes that trip can be worth it. So those are some of the items. What did I miss, Jerry? You threw out quite a bit. You're muted.
I'm sorry. It's not really a matter of responding to me today. It's that one to raise some concerns. I'm particularly concerned about where is this going? And you've indicated today that there is going to be an action situation. And that's what I'm after seeing is you're looking at weaknesses today. What are you going to be doing about those weaknesses? Sure, I understand there are cost factors. What can be done to minimize those cost factors and still get some of the weaknesses resolved? So you're telling me today there's going to be a plan to do that. It's just so far what I'm seeing is, okay, this is what we're doing. And I don't want to see it stop there. I want to see, let's improve. Let's change those weaknesses into strengths. And I'm not after today on any of it. I'm just raising concern.
I think you may have missed the one of the meetings that we kind of talked about the stepped process in which we're going to proceed through this. It doesn't do any good. We have to agree on the as-is system and the strengths and weaknesses. before we can really kind of come together and say what we're going to do. And we hope to be able to do that at a much longer board retreat type meeting to where we can spend a lot of time discussing the pros and cons of whatever actions that we wanted to do. So we can kind of talk a little bit more after this, Jerry, if you'd want, like we talked about, if you want to stay after the meeting, I'd be more than happy to talk with you in further detail.
That'll be fine, or at some future date. I'm just raising concerns today. I'm going to be looking at some of these things, watching to see what happens in the future.
Okay, that's fine. I would love to stay on and talk with you if you don't mind.
I will, yes.
All right, are there any other comments?
I'll just say, I know that we're not quite there in the process yet, but, I agree with Jerry in that we should really be visionary and really, looking out at what's feasible in the short term, but also what our long-term goals are, and really conscious of where we want to be in the next, 5 years, and what are some actions that we can take that step by step really snowball into impactful changes.
I think you're in agreement with everyone who is working on this currently, so thank you very much. Any other public input? I would like to take the opportunity to thank each and every one of you for adjusting your schedules to accommodate my schedule. I was unavailable for tomorrow night's meeting, and I certainly appreciate everyone joining today on my behalf. So thank you very much. Announcements. Next 109 board meeting is June 22nd. Is that correct, Pete?
The 22nd, that is correct.
All right. And it's my understanding for everyone on the advisory committee that we're going to drop all other activities and focus solely on the 5-year plan for meetings, future meetings, until we get to the submittal of that 5-year plan. So all the subcommittee meetings will be canceled. We will focus solely on full advisory committee meetings on the 5-year plan. Any questions about that? Okay. With that, unless there's any other comments, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Greg.
Motion by Mr. Greg Sarandek. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by
Marie.
Marie, I'm sorry. Thank you, Marie.
Mhm.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you all very much, and have a nice afternoon.
Bye.
Thanks.
You guys